You noble diggers, all stand up now.
Hello my friends, and welcome to my channel. Today we will be talking about what will the intelligence agencies be like after the revolution. Right? The intelligence agencies, if you've been following this channel at all, you'll know, you could probably predict how I'm going to talk about this, right? That the Commonwealth of His Majesty King Charles III, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the island dependencies should apply for statehood within the United States of America so that this power can turn around and bargain in good faith with the rest of the world, right? And bargain with the rest of the world so as to prevent civilizational collapse associated with climate change, right? Um, the intelligence agencies, as they work right now, are seditious. They don't really accomplish much, and they also have their own ideological bents, which disrupt their mission statement, their mission goals. There's also a duplication of effort, right? There's so many agencies, duplication of centers, right? We go back to the Commonwealth of His Majesty King Charles III. Why would we have Canberra compete against Ottawa, compete against London, compete against Washington, right? The centers of power each have a parliament to themselves, and it creates a system of intelligence that requires that these people, preen, compete for privilege, spots, influence, time with the wealthy. And so they're just fighting each other, right? They're not producing efficiency. It's actually inefficient. It's loss, right? And also all these agencies, right? The NSA, the CIA, the FBI, MI6, CSIS, whatever the Australian one is, um, it doesn't help, right? Then they're competing for resources. Then they're competing for missions, right? Because what is the real difference between the NSA and the CIA, for instance, right? Someone who's reasonably well read might tell you that the CIA is responsible for foreign intelligence operations, whereas the NSA is responsible for signal intelligence within the United States, right? But I would tell you that that's ridiculous, right? That both missions overlap so much that the Venn diagram is a circle, right? They're the same mission, right? And the CIA doesn't operate in the United States, right? I've got a bridge to sell you, right? They're everywhere in this United States, and that's not the only problem, right? There's other problems with these agencies. The main one that I see is the secrecy times, right? The secrecy times are something that a state uses to protect confidential information for a set amount of time that it believes will protect the state from, the uprising of the people over it, right? And the example I'm going to cite here is the mutinies of 1917, 1918 within the French army, right? We just got that information out of the French government in the early 2010s, I'm pretty sure. They released it early by a few years, right? But 100 years, their grandchildren are dead, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So there has to be a shorter response time. I believe the absolute upper limit of what secrecy should entail is 5 years, right? And if you are so worried about the comeuppance that could come from the operations that you're conducting, that perhaps it wasn't in the interest of the state that you serve, right? And that brings me to my next point, which is that the CIA killed JFK, right? They did that. We know that they did that. And so we have to do something about it. Obviously, we should be uh, criminally pursuing everybody who knew, everybody who's associated with somebody who knew, right? Maybe even subjecting them to prescriptions, but that's a lot of violence, right? And I don't want to impose on people who are servants trapped within a terrible system, right? And so what we're going to do is a symbolic castigation, a symbolic punishment of the CIA. During the French Revolution, the revolutionaries in Paris went to Saint Denis, which is a parish or a village next to Paris, where for about 1,000 years the French royalty had been buried, interred, right? And they went to Saint Denis, dug up the royals' remains, and acidified their bones, right? And that sounds like a good solution. Nobody gets hurt, right? It is distasteful. You are exhuming someone to desecrate them, exhumation for desecration. But Allen Dulles is a traitor. Right? He had JFK killed, and then he lied. He perjured himself throughout the Warren Commission, which advances ridiculous theories like the magic bullet. Right? The CIA committed treason, or at least sedition, and then turned around and lied to the American people about it and told them that it wasn't their need to know. Right? That's nuts. That cannot happen. And so my next problem solution set, will address this fact, right? Because even though this symbolic crushing of the spirit of the reactionary intelligence agencies is necessary, right? They have to be brought to heel, right? They have to be told they serve executive commands, right? And to bring them to heel, you have to orchestrate fights within them, right? You don't want a silent shadow war in the background, which will be the inevitability of any intelligence, given carte blanche like they have right now. So instead, I would orchestrate these flower wars by uh, managing the recruitment intake process into colleges, right? Colleges of ideological difference, right? As of right now, basically everyone in the intelligence asset sphere has to be a conservative or reactionary, and it creates ideological short-sightedness, right? It creates commitments to things that aren't reality, and in fact has proved to be the undoing of the American empire, right? Just because they managed to defeat the Soviets with this ideology, right? Due to geography too, not the ideology, right? Um, the Americans won the Cold War because of geography and are losing the second Cold War in spite of geography, right? And they have the best geography on Earth and they have the worst system on Earth, and it manages to balance itself out, right? So every other parliament on Earth, right, say Portugal, Poland, whatever, they all have basically a couple factions, right? The communists, the socialists, the liberals, the conservatives, and the reactionaries. There's further right than that, but I exclude them from humanity. These colleges, these recruitment ideologies, should be given their own kind of temple within the intelligence agency, right? Some kind of power structure, right? So you could even write laws that devote powers to the certain colleges, right? You could say that the left, the communists, have the power to assassinate, or not the communists, the socialists have the power to assassinate business leaders who are doing, treason. Martin Shkreli, that would have been a great person to be open to assassination. Andrew Tate, right, destroying the reputation of the world by abusing women, doesn't need to be there. It can just go, right, by executive command, by fiat. And then these colleges can be dispersed throughout society, right? And so I want more intelligence agencies. The way the intelligence agencies were developed, if you look at it through World War II, is that these are noblemen, right? These are rich people. Stuart Menzies, who was Churchill's MI6 head, was a classmate of Churchill's at Eton, right? He went to Eton College, the finishing school for the nobility, for the upper crust of British society, right? And that kind of makes sense if you imagine an intelligence agency kind of like the nervous system for two 300-pound, 500-pound gorillas that are about to fight, right? They direct masses of muscle and flesh, right? But it doesn't make any sense anymore. The population of Britain during World War II was 40 million, right? The population of the Anglosphere today is something like 500 or 600 million, right? And so the intelligence agencies have to be proletarianized. They have to be lowered a rung so that they can be expanded in scope, right? And so basically, I want all law students, all medical students, all engineering students inducted into a very, very low rung of intelligence asset, right? So that there is a constant farming of these people, and then also this prevents ideological weeding by the reactionaries, who will no doubt come to find some excuse that says the left and the liberals must be excluded from this zone as a matter of national security, because they're traitors and they must be constantly castigated for it. Why I want this orchestrated, behind the scenes shadow war for the CIA is because of something I call a systems collapse, right? What I would hate to happen is that I set up a system that is broken by a smart man within 80 or 100 years, right? I'd rather have it break constantly, kind of just not work. So if you think about Chinese history, right, this is what I think of when I think of a systems collapse, right? They pushed the Great Wall out during Qin Shi Huangdi and then uh, Wu, Emperor Wu. Um, and this system pushes the steppe nomads out into the far north steppe, right? And also on top of this, they would go out and smash the nomads from time to time and support weaker princes, right? So as to keep the steppe divided, so that there was no single power leading the steppe nomads against the people behind the wall, the Chinese, right? But what this actually did was ensured that when the person who finally did unite the tribes achieved what they set out to, right, between the fall of the Turkic Khaganate and the rise of Genghis Khan, there was basically no centralized leadership on the steppe, right? So that's like 500 years of division, right? But at the end of it, the person who managed to impose a systems collapse on the Chinese system of maintaining peace on the steppe was a guy who rolled a natural 20 for his diplomacy, for his administration, for his military prowess. He was just better than his peers at basically everything. And I would hate for a reactionary to do the same thing to the intelligence agencies that I intend to set up. And so there must be a constant bickering, feuding, a barely visible war, a flower war, a symbolic war, one with very few casualties. But I feel that this will best coordinate for the greatest expanse of time an intelligence agency that will be subordinate and deferential to an executive that seeks to provide the greatest prosperity for its most amount of people. Thank you for your time.